I hope to make a series of videos on slavery about the different periods that I'm going to read. The first book on this list, it's in the title page, Did the Old Testament Endorse Slavery? By Joshua Bowen of the YouTube channel Digital Hammurabi. And it is the first on my list because I think it's the earliest instance of slavery which I'm going to look at in detail in a book like that. Though the book is intended for a very general audience, and it does its job, and it's useful also for reference purposes and so on. It has a lot of relevance to the religious YouTube discourse in the sense that most of it is trying to debunk a false assumption about slavery, where just explaining academically what the consensus is would take a bit shorter, but he has gone out of his way to provide a lot of quotes, citations, examples, comparisons, so that it really is clear. There are several other books on my reading list on slavery that relate to that, that the Old Testament and its portrayal of slavery, namely the Middle Ages, for example, in this book by Sandrine Victor in French. For example, the section on the Talmud and the Pentateuch just the Old Testament are not very clear if you don't have all the definitions, and certainly the contrasts, and also the developments between passages in the Old Testament, in the Bible, that Joshua Bowen very clearly provides. Its other periods are the Renaissance, of course. I've already shown this book in my other video. I've started it, but haven't read it yet. And here as well, of course, the Christian notion is very important, and that was influenced by the Jewish notion of what is permissible, what kind of slavery, and how do we treat our slaves, and so on. There's another book on slavery after Rome, so on the Middle Ages, that I intend on reading kind of in combination with this one. So the two, maybe the best books you can find. There's also the Cambridge History of Slavery, World History of Slavery, maybe it's called. That is going to publish their book in next year maybe, but soon. I think it's the second volume of the Cambridge World History of Slavery. Now, I haven't read the Bible in full. I've only read parts of it. And so the question is maybe, for whom is this book by Joshua Bowen? I think it's clear that it is for a very, very wide audience, but not for experts. I think it's very obvious that he's not having a radical new theory in this book. An interesting question that I asked myself, because I don't know enough, and I certainly don't know as much as Dr. Josh, but it is that is a question of law enforcement in the ancient world and the society, whether it is more like a prescription of what the religious elite think is acceptable, but not actually the secular reality, I suppose. It does seem, and it may be, that this text is from a strong common legal tradition. And so in this context, I think it's interesting to ask, what does it mean for a holy text and for a religion to reject or accept or modify the ideas present at the time around slavery and around the living with the slave trade and so on? For instance, the question of whether the Old Testament condoned or endorsed slavery. It's pretty clear it did endorse slavery, but as a historian, it isn't enough to just ethically condemn the people at the time, though at the same time you have to remember the facts, you have to remember or imagine what it meant to be, what it really meant to be a slave, and how this was based on the relationship, slave-master relationship, that was inherently violent, that meant you can only get the other guy to work, the slave to work, if you do use violence and discipline the slave and so on. Josh explains how this is also condoned by, or endorsed by, the Old Testament. But in this light, it is, what does it mean to make the difference between condone and endorse slavery, when the people on the ground, the people that witness to this slavery and that stand by it in the name of their, not in the name of their religion, but in the name of their culture. And I make this distinction because if it were just in the name of religion, it's almost like a radical idea, but the religion accepts this and even modifies it a bit. So I say more, it's in the name of their culture that they do this, but they witness this and they do see the reality of it. They probably feel the reality of it, even though they grow up in a place where this is normal. And in this sense, it is, someone condones it because people can see the problems of it. And this, Sandrine Victor and also others like Olivier Grenouillot in French, they, and I guess other historians, they acknowledge this fact that if you justify something ideologically, religiously, culturally, you don't need a justification for something that is unproblematic. You just do it. This just happens. But if there's a justification needed, it's an indication of something problematic, of a problem. And this is more to say that the Old Testament condones slavery as as opposed to what ordinary people feel is violent, and that our human nature, our empathy, maybe sometimes recognizes and sometimes can spot, even though this is not always the case, and often it is something that happens around us and we're blind to it. Every time I go to the grocery store, people walk past the meat aisle and the fish aisle, and I see dead corpses, but people become blind to it and don't see the same thing that I see. And this is a whole generation that was before me, before veganism became a big movement and so on, or a mediocre movement in our societies today. A name everybody recognizes, let's put it that way. And people of that earlier generation, they did not recognize this. And they still don't, and they don't really think of it. They actively refrain from thinking of what happened to this particular animal. And they actively refrain from thinking through where the food comes from, where the milk comes from, and when the milk belongs to a particular cow, how this particular cow was then killed for its meat, and its baby was taken away for its milk, and so on. The parts of the Bible that I've read are, for example, for when I researched anti-Semitism, I read the book of John and other parts in the New Testament. Sometimes I read parts of Exodus for some more violent scenes of war and the reality of war in ancient societies, which the book also goes into, which is interesting. There's a parallel to be made for the question of whether the Old Testament, i.e. The Jewish and Christian doctrines or interpretive frameworks, endorse slavery to the reader when they have a certain set of assumptions reading the Bible. But this is true, as I put it now, it's true not only for the period of the Israelites in ancient Israel, but it's true for other ages, for other slaveries. And some of these creeds, in some forms, with some interpretive frameworks, still do endorse slavery, because they see the written word of the Bible through a kind of fundamentalist lens. And it is worrying, and it is something that throughout history, if you look at the different periods of history, that comes up again and again, and that doesn't just go away with time, because this is a book that keeps being read in the different languages, for a long time only in Latin, but gets translated into German and into English and so on. The question, do Christians historically have blood on their hands, seems pretty obvious. Of course they do. At times there is a tendency to think of persons instead of creeds as the bad apples versus, well, what I see as bad and evil and wrong beliefs. And it's a thought experiment worth having of a Christian society on the scale of the family, on the pastor and the community, the religious community, and the whole society. The political implications are important. It is to be honest enough to look at the historical examples, particular examples of slavery, to refute a particular moral theory, an interpretative framework, and from this, it's very clear to me at least, that a theory is always fallible, whether moral or scientific. I think we can infer from this a rule that historical examples always take precedence over theory, always have the role of refuting theory and hunches and opinions of a theoretical nature. At one point in an interview about his book, Joshua Bowen, he says, "It is fear that drives me," and he's talking about making the bibliography for the book, and that making sure everything is in there for the reader. And it is the same sort of thing that we have to do with when we look at theories and whether scientific or moral, principles which we can look at how they are realized, and then questioning the infallibility of the principles, or when we have questioned it, to let these historical examples refute the moral principle, and be a bit humble about it and say, okay, yeah, maybe this book isn't that morally righteous after all.